He used to be the loneliest orphan, until he found himself trapped with his crush in a post-apocalyptic world. Maru is a young, awkward guy living in the ruins of Japan, a total loser, to the point that he has a female bodyguard named Kiruko who has to protect him. She refuses to sleep with him, even though he's one of the last men left alive. Together, they roam the empty streets of what used to be Japan, searching for a mysterious place known as Heaven. One day, they break into an abandoned mansion that turns out to be surprisingly luxurious and full of supplies. Maru, being the gentleman he is, tells Kiruko to head to the kitchen where she belongs and make him something to eat. She ends up using wild weeds growing outside to cook, trying to make them edible. But instead of getting him high, the meal just turns out bitter. Still, Maru forces himself to finish it because, well, he's a swallower, not a spitter. Later that night, they decide to stay in the house. Maru catches Kiruko staring at a photo of two men much better looking than him, which makes him jealous. She explains that one of them is someone she's searching for, and the other is just a friend. The exact same line his ex used before dumping him. The next morning, the pair decides to follow the railroad tracks to look for signs of life and more clues about Heaven. But suddenly, they're ambushed by a group of grimy old men who practically lose their minds after seeing what they think are two girls. Maru insists he's a guy, but the pervy old men don't care. They're so down bad they're ready to practice on him for future crimes. Kiruko whips out a gun and threatens to shoot like a true American, which makes the men back off. But the ugliest one notices that her gun looks fake. When she hides it, they assume she's bluffing and rush forward. She yells at Maru to run as she climbs a tall fence. The first man swings a crowbar at Maru, but he dodges and kicks him where it hurts most. He grabs the man's arm, beats him down, and launches himself over the fence just as Kiruko fires her weapon. Her shot hits a telephone pole, which melts instantly and crashes beside another attacker. Kiruko points the gun at the rest and threatens to turn them into Korean BBQ unless they tell her everything they know about Heaven. The terrified men lead them back to their hideout, an abandoned hospital. Kiruko finds a generator there and demands to use it to charge a battery. They refuse at first, but quickly agree once they're staring down the barrel of her weapon. No one seems to know anything about Heaven until a man in a helmet appears with a map, claiming he's heard of a place called Tomato Heaven. Once the battery is charged, Maru and Kiruko thank them, then reveal the truth. The battery was actually for their gun. The men are furious once they realize they've been tricked. Meanwhile, somewhere else, a young girl named Tokyo attends school. She's hit with a surprise math test, panics because she didn't study, and can't charm her way out of trouble, especially since her teacher this time is a robot. As she doodles across her paper, a strange glitch flashes on her screen, revealing an extra question. Do you want to go beyond the outside? After class, Tokyo tells her friend Mimihime about it. Mimihime, an Attack on Titan fan, takes her to the walls surrounding their enclosed school. She says she's always believed there's another world beyond them, and that when she imagines exploring it, she sees two people helping her. One of them even looks just like Tokyo. Later that night, unable to sleep, Tokyo wanders outside. The school's director finds her and asks what's wrong. When she asks if there's a world outside the walls, the director admits that there is, but it's a horrifying place they call Hell. Meanwhile, Maru and Kiruko continue through the empty countryside toward Tomato Heaven. Exhausted, they stop at a small inn run by a kind woman who offers them a room for cheap, plus a rare set of AA batteries. Kiruko shows the woman the photo of the two men from earlier, explaining that the younger one is named Robin, while she never learned the older man's name, only that she was told to call him Daddy. The woman doesn't recognize them, nor does she find their names in her records. They relax as the owner cooks them a hot meal. Maru notices a gun case and asks about it, and she explains that she keeps it for protection because a monster has been lurking nearby. She warns them not to go out at night. Both of them tense up when they realize she might be talking about a maneater, a creature with a grotesque face that devours humans. Maru offers to help kill it with their weapon, but the owner suddenly turns quiet and uneasy before walking away. That evening, she serves them a delicious boar stew, which they happily devour. During dinner, she asks where they're from. Kiruko explains that she's originally from Tokyo and that she's only traveling with Maru because her employer hired her as his bodyguard. Annoyed by how she keeps rejecting him for no reason, Maru gives her the silent treatment later that night. Maru moves his futon away from Kiruko. She tries to ask what's wrong, but he's already fast asleep. As soon as she turns off the lights, a heavy wave of drowsiness washes over her and she collapses onto the bed. When she wakes up, she's startled to see multiple eyes staring at her through the window. Nervously, she reaches for her gun, but it vanishes in an instant. Maru wakes up with difficulty and Kiruko takes the lead. She quickly deduces that the inn's owner must have slipped something into their food to make them sleep. Outside the inn, they find the owner with her rifle aimed into the darkness. She urgently tells them to go back inside, but Maru insists they can handle the maneater for her. At that moment, his flashlight catches a shadow zipping above them before landing behind a broken-down car. After losing sight of the creature, Maru and Kiruko stand back to back, circling around with their flashlights. Suddenly, a streak of blue light shoots toward them, nearly striking Kiruko. They come face to face with a massive, winged monster, its face shaped like a star. Maru hurls a barrel at it, but the monster destroys it effortlessly. He realizes it has long, whip-like appendages. Avoiding the beam of the flashlight, the creature lunges straight at him, but Kiruko manages to push him out of the way just in time. The monster's whips strike a nearby car instead, triggering an explosion. As the beast recoils from the blast, Maru quickly analyzes it, noting that the maneater has 3 whips on each arm. They'll need to destroy those before he can get close enough to kill it. While the two argue over who should go first, the creature makes the decision for them, cornering them in their hiding spot. They run for their lives until Kiruko finds a sharp turn. As they change direction, she spins around and lands a perfect shot, blowing off one of the monster's arms and a wing. Maru uses his flashlight to distract the creature while Kiruko hides behind a truck, lining up another shot. As the beast approaches, she's about to pull the trigger when the innkeeper suddenly grabs her, causing her to miss. Kiruko tries again, but the gun jams. The owner runs toward the monster, screaming for them to stop, claiming that the creature is her son. She explains that her boy was devoured by the monster, but somehow took over its body from within. Kiruko tries to snap her out of her delusion, but the woman insists the beast protects her and has even saved her life before. To everyone's surprise, Kiruko decides to play along. They watch as the woman tenderly touches the monster's face, as if they truly understand each other. But in an instant, the creature's whips slash through the air, brutally tearing her apart. Kiruko calmly observes that the monster can only swing its whips in one direction, meaning there's a brief pause between each attack. Maru, disturbed by how unfazed she seems at the woman's death, stays silent when he notices a tear roll down her cheek. He wipes it away gently and tells her he'll finish it. Maru advances toward the beast, timing his movements perfectly with the intervals between its attacks. When he finally gets close enough, he grabs one of its legs and presses his palm to its flesh, activating his special ability to invade the man-eater's body and crush its core from the inside. The monster collapses instantly, dead. The next day, Maru and Kiruko continue their journey toward Tomato Heaven. They arrive at a city half submerged under hundreds of feet of water from the Great Disaster. Using a small raft, they paddle across toward their destination. On the other side, they find a vast field of crops, but it's unclear if this is truly the heaven they're searching for. Maru explains that his mission is to find someone who looks exactly like him and inject them with a special drug. He doesn't understand the purpose, only that it's supposed to help everyone. Soon after, they're greeted by the friendly locals who invite them to meet their leader, Kukoseb. He and his wife deliver the typical speech of a cult leader, describing their land as a refuge for those who wish to live simple lives after the apocalypse. Maru seems captivated by their words, but Kiruko remains cautious. Something about the place feels wrong. Suddenly, a man in the crowd shouts that he recognizes Kiruko. He claims she looks exactly like a famous race car driver named Kiruko. She denies it, but the man shows Maru a photograph of a woman identical to her, except for the hair color. He says he's glad to finally find her, revealing that the woman disappeared 5 years ago after accidentally killing her brother during a race. The accusation clearly hits a nerve, and Maru quickly changes the subject by asking about a strange logo printed on a nearby box. He realizes it's the same symbol engraved on Kiruko's gun. When they ask where it came from, the man explains that it's impossible to trace, since their settlement trades with merchants from all over Tokyo. Knowing the gun's connection to Maru's origins, they decide to return to Tokyo to investigate the logo further. On the ship heading there, Maru becomes seasick and, in his delirium, confesses his feelings to Kiruko. She gently rejects him, explaining that while she has the body of a woman, her mind is that of a man. Kiruko began explaining her past. She and her younger brother, Haruki, had grown up in an orphanage run by an old doctor. The same man in the photo everyone called Daddy. Kiruko had been a successful electric kart racer, while her brother spent most of his time with an older man named Robin, a member of a gang that hunted down maneaters. Rumors spread around the orphanage that Daddy, the doctor, was secretly conducting research on maneaters. 5 years ago, Haruki joined Robin's gang on a maneater hunt. He was practically useless in combat, but he came back acting like he'd achieved something great. Later, on one of Kiruko's race days, Haruki spotted an invisible maneater lurking near the end of the track. Fearing his sister would run right into it, he tried to kill it himself using a small crossbow. His arrow barely scratched the creature. It only enraged it. The maneater attacked and began devouring him alive. Kiruko, leading the race, saw the chaos and immediately stopped. When she realized the monster was eating Haruki, she drove her cart straight toward it. The impact flung her into the air, doing little damage to the creature. With what strength she had left, she pulled what remained of Haruki's body out of the monster's mouth. The creature then wandered away, leaving behind only half of him. It seemed too late, but Haruki opened his eyes. He saw Kiruko holding him tightly, sobbing uncontrollably. Then a gunshot rang out, and everything went dark. When Haruki next opened his eyes, he found himself in a hospital, in Kiruko's body. Everyone around him insisted that Haruki had died in the maneater attack and that he was Kiruko. But he knew they were lying. The only person who could tell him the truth, the one who saved his life, was the doctor they called Daddy. It turned out that Daddy had performed the operation that somehow transferred Haruki's mind into Kiruko's body, but he vanished without a trace immediately after. Once Haruki recovered, he returned to the orphanage only to find it shut down. Locals told him that after the maneater incident, several people had mysteriously disappeared. Robin was said to have been murdered, and Daddy was missing. With no evidence of Robin's death, Haruki believed he was still alive, and the only one who might know the truth. From that day on, Haruki lived as Kiruko, traveling across Japan doing odd jobs while searching for Robin and Daddy. 4 years later, he met Maru and took on the job of being his bodyguard. After hearing her story, Maru promised his support. He awkwardly asked if it was still okay to refer to her as a girl. Kiruko smirked and replied that she identified as an Apache helicopter, so any pronouns were fine. Maru was still trying to process his sexuality crisis when a scream echoed across the ship. They rushed to investigate and found a massive fish with glowing red eyes staring at them through the hull. Kiruko fired point blank, but the bullets had no effect. The creature's body was covered by a thick water coating that shielded it from attacks. While the crew panicked and tried to barricade the ship, Kiruko decided their best chance was to lure the creature inside. She reasoned that the fish needed to stay near water to maintain its protective coating, and it would be easier to fight it within the narrow corridors of the ship. Together, she and Maru lured the monster on board and ran deeper inside, ensuring it followed them. The creature blasted a powerful jet of water from its mouth, but they managed to dodge and lead it below deck. They hit a dead end, and Maru desperately tried to open a locked door. Kiruko told him to calm down and find his courage. He turned around, realizing that the boxes stacked nearby, filled with illegal cargo, were absorbing the water spilling from the fish. The ship had been smuggling weed and was now soaking up all the liquid from the monster's coating. As the water dried, the fish's defenses weakened. It collapsed, and Maru seized the chance to use his power to invade its body and destroy its core. Back in Tokyo, the scene shifted to the school. Tokyo met a strange girl in her class named Kuku, who promised to show her a secret place. The two snuck to the outer wall of the campus, where a vent was hidden high up. Using impressive agility, Kuku climbed up, and Tokyo used a futuristic cleaning robot to follow. Tokyo expected they were sneaking a peek at the boys' locker room, but instead, Kuku led her into a dim, eerie room filled with alien-looking babies in glass containers. When Tokyo reached out to touch one, an alarm blared. Kuku immediately crawled back into the vent, leaving Tokyo behind. Frozen with fear, Tokyo stayed completely still until the alarm stopped. When no one arrived, Kuku returned to pull her back up, and they both hurried back to the school. The next day, Tokyo visited her bedridden friend, Taro, who suffered from a chronic illness. He awkwardly tried to flirt with her, but she found his advances uncomfortable and ran away. Outside, she was comforted by Kona, the school's most popular boy. She told him how strange her classmates had been acting lately, and he explained that it was just part of growing up. After talking for a while, she admitted that if she were ever to like someone, it would be him. And Kona quietly said he felt the same. Meanwhile, Taro's rejection hit him hard. His condition worsened overnight, and he begged the authorities to let him see Tokyo one last time. He rushes to his room, and once they're alone, he whispers to her that she should run away from this place. It's too dangerous. The next day, Taro is declared dead, and a funeral is held for him in the town square. He becomes the second tragic death at the school, following a girl named Asura, who had taken her own life for unknown reasons. Meanwhile, the ship finally reaches the shore. The captain thanks Maru and Kiruko for defeating the maneater. They ask the crew if anyone recognizes the bird-shaped logo engraved on Kiruko's gun, and one of the men identifies it as the emblem of a town called Mitsuba. He gives them directions to reach it. When they arrive, they find the town completely demolished and abandoned. On one wall, a crude graffiti of a chicken is all that remains. Maru tries to make the best of the situation by scavenging some packets of a strange sweet food called yalkan, which they use to make a simple but tasty soup. The next day, they finally reach a town that still has people living in it. Maru heads to an arcade to play video games, trying to distract himself from the heartbreak of discovering that the girl he liked turned out to be a guy. A group of thugs spots him and assumes he's an easy outsider to pick on. They try to mess with him, but Maru doesn't hesitate. He punches and kicks the first man who tries to grab him. Afterward, he awkwardly apologizes, but the thug retaliates by kicking one of his teeth out. That's all the reason Maru needs to beat them all down. Kiruko arrives in the middle of the chaos, joins in the fight for fun, and together they drive the gang away. Later, the two sit down and have a heart-to-heart conversation. Maru opens up about his childhood. He was born the same year the Great Disaster occurred, and his earliest memories are from an orphanage in an unknown town where life was relatively peaceful. But when he turned 7, all the children were divided into groups, each led by an adult. 3 years later, his group leader was killed in a turf war, and the gang leader responsible took them in and raised them as gangsters. Maru stayed with the gang until a woman named Mikura found him. She took him in and taught him how to use his ability, the Maru Touch, to kill man-eaters. During their travels, Kiruko asks if Mikura also had similar powers, but Maru explains that she told him he was the only one with this gift, which is why he needs to reach heaven. Later, Kiruko goes to the market to sell a few books she found in a nearby room. She returns with a hand-drawn map she bought after selling the books. The map's seller had marked various places with ratings based on water quality and taste. Desperate for any lead, they decide to visit the place with the highest rating, 100%, reasoning that heaven surely must have perfect water. At that moment, they hear footsteps in the hallway. They freeze, fearing the thugs might have tracked them down for revenge. The footsteps stop outside their door, followed by knocking. They remain silent, but the knocking continues until a man's voice calls out, saying he knows they're inside and asking to be let in because he was on the same ship as them. When they finally open the door, the man pleads for their protection until he can reach a place called the Immortal Order, where a doctor supposedly grants people eternal life. Kiruko immediately suspects that the doctor might be none other than Daddy. She questions the man, but he admits he's never been there and has never seen the doctor's face. Still, he's heard rumors that the doctor fuses small parts of man-eaters into human bodies to make people stronger and immortal. Excitedly, the man pulls a jar from his bag, only to discover that the fish monster part he'd been keeping inside has completely rotted. Kiruko offers him money to wipe away his tears in exchange for the Immortal Order's location. It turns out the place is just a short distance from the 100% safe water town. They decide to visit the water town first, then the Immortal Order afterward. The map describes the nearby area as being filled with weird people, which doesn't inspire confidence. When they arrive, they're approached by a young woman who warmly offers them lodging. At first, they refuse, but Kiruko notices the sadness in her expression and agrees to rent 2 rooms to store their belongings while they look for the perfect water source. When they ask her about it, she looks confused. She doesn't know what they're talking about, but suggests checking an underground entrance nearby where water tends to collect. Following her directions, they find the underground area, but the water looks far from pure. Maru spots a man collapsed in the basement and rushes to help him. The man's wounds are deep and severe, but he's still conscious. With his last bit of strength, he begs them to save his friend from the man-eater that attacked them. Kiruko searches the area with her flashlight and finds the friend's lifeless body floating in the water. Then she notices movement, a massive bear-like creature nearby. It roars and charges at them. They flee the basement, Kiruko leading the way. She turns back and fires 2 powerful energy beams at a concrete pillar, causing it to collapse and pin the beast underneath. Maru rushes forward and uses his Maru Touch to kill it, but nothing happens. They watch in confusion as the creature suddenly opens its eyes and starts chasing them again. That's when they realize it isn't a man-eater at all, but an actual brown bear, which is somehow even worse. They scramble up another pillar to get out of reach, but the bear remains below, staring at them. Hours pass until sunset, when the animal finally disappears from sight. Still, they can't shake the feeling it's nearby. Kiruko removes the battery from her gun to warm it up, just in case she needs to use her last shot. but it slips from her hands and falls all the way down to the floor below. Maru immediately refuses her request to retrieve it. Maru refuses to go down and retrieve the battery, but after Kiruko bribes him with the offer of letting him touch her melons, he immediately climbs down, grabs the battery in seconds, and races back up with lightning speed, just as a bear emerges from behind a car. Realizing there's no other way out, Kiruko asks him to go back down and shoot the bear since she's too scared to climb that high again. Her plan is simple. Once the bear is dead, she'll jump and use its body as a cushion for her landing. Maru, however, points out that even if she gives him the gun, there's no guarantee he'll hit it. His aim isn't nearly as good as hers. He admits that he would have died at least 5 times if it weren't for her. The words make her soften. The validation she always wanted from Robin finally comes from him. She agrees to come up with a new plan. Following their new approach, Maru jumps down first and catches Kiruko as she follows. The moment she lands, Maru sprints away to draw the bear's attention. It charges toward her instead, and she quickly prays that her final bullet won't misfire. Thankfully, her shot lands perfectly. The bullet pierces the bear's head, killing it instantly. Maru approaches the body carefully with a rock in hand, just in case. Kiruko yells at him for not running away, but he replies that he's disappointed she'd even think he'd abandon her. Afterward, they bring the wounded man from the basement back with them for treatment and spend the night in their rented rooms. Kiruko later realizes that the thugs from the previous town must have tricked them, likely in cooperation with the map seller, marking this location as the 100% safe water town just to lure them here and let the bear finish them off. Amused by her clever deduction, Maru demands she honor her earlier promise to let him touch her chest. But their noise draws the attention of the inn's owner, who storms in and drags Maru into another room, scolding him for breaking the rules and making a mess. Back at the school, Tokyo worries she might have caught something from Taro since she vomited after his funeral. The robot nurse checks her and assures her there's no sign of illness, prescribing only rest. While napping, Tokyo dreams of Asura's ghost floating above her, red sores spreading across her legs. The next day, she visits Kona's room, and the two of them watch Netflix together. And that's all they do. Meanwhile, Maru and Kiruko make a sign announcing that they hunt maneaters, hoping to attract the attention of the Immortal Order, much like an OnlyFans model trying to get customers online. That night, a few old men approach them and tell them to follow. They're led to a shady hideout where Kiruko demands to see Daddy. It doesn't take long for them to realize these people aren't with the Immortal Order. Instead, the group identifies themselves as Livamen, a humanitarian organization working against the Order. They explain that the Immortal Order disguises itself as a hospital but secretly conducts horrific experiments on its patients, merging human bodies with mechanical parts to explore how to transfer human brains into machines. Their leader, Mizu, recounts her own experience. She once wandered into an operating room by accident and found a body chopped into pieces but still kept alive by machines. The poor creature had begged her to let it die. Livaman's mission is to expose the Order's inhumane acts before their twisted methods spread across the world. They reveal that their experiments are led by a doctor named Usami. Kiruko asks if this doctor could be Daddy, but they say Usami is much younger than the man in the photo. When Kiruko mentions that the Order uses maneater parts in human experiments, the group is shocked. It's new information to them. Still, it fits perfectly with what they know. The Order has been keeping a maneater locked in their basement. That's why they called Maru and Kiruko here. They want to hire them to kill the creature. Kiruko immediately accepts, but Maru notices she's not thinking straight, driven more by her obsession with finding Daddy and avenging her sister than by logic. The next day, they prepare for their mission. Outside the Immortal Order's building, Mizu leads a massive demonstration to distract the guards while Maru and Kiruko sneak in through a back entrance guarded by a Livaman ally. Inside the basement, they find a brightly lit parking lot, but no sign of a maneater. Maru admits that something feels off. It reminds him too much of the bear trap incident. He wonders why the man who brought them the rotted maneater parts went through so much trouble when the Order supposedly had its own monster. He suspects this is a setup, that they've been lured here to become experimental subjects like the mutilated body Mizu described. Kiruko stiffens, worried they might be trapped in a gas-filled chamber. But then she spots a strange object on a car hood, vaguely animal-like in shape. They realize it's a dormant maneater. Maru touches it, senses its core, and destroys it instantly. Relieved that his suspicions were wrong, they start to relax, until they find another dormant maneater nearby. Searching the parking lot, they discover several more, killing each one. Eventually, they come across a massive, grotesque creature that seems to be the source of the smaller ones. They guess the little ones spawned from it, but Maru still can't figure out why they're frozen in place. Kiruko explains that when man-eaters are on the verge of death, they play dead to preserve energy. This means the ones here haven't been fed since they were captured. Their presence suddenly awakens one of the dormant creatures. It emerges from its coma-like state, and Kiruko shoots at it, but misses. She loses sight of it for a moment until it bursts out of the ground right at her feet. She narrowly escapes its grasp, only for more of them to crawl out of the walls. They swarm in from every direction. Maru is immediately overpowered, while Kiruko struggles to fight back. She fires beam after beam, but her shots have no effect. One of the creatures climbs onto her and bites deep into her right arm with its metallic jaws. She screams in pain, blood pouring from the wound, and everything fades to black. When she regains consciousness, Maru is giving her mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. He quickly reassures her that nothing's there anymore. Kiruko, still disoriented, wonders if she hallucinated the entire thing. Maru explains that she suddenly began shooting everywhere and thrashing violently after seeing a massive man-eater. Once she calms down, he lets her rest and goes back to finish off the creatures. When he's done, a man wearing an eye patch approaches and asks them to kill one more subject for him. They demand to know who he is. He introduces himself as Dr. Uzami. He leads them upstairs, where they find a small hospital filled with injured people using prosthetic limbs. The patients all treat Dr. Uzami with deep respect. Inside one of the rooms, he asks Maru to kill the person lying there the same way he killed the dormant man-eaters. When he draws the curtain, Kiruko sees a body chopped up and kept alive by machines, exactly as Mizu had described. She asks why he doesn't just unplug her if he wants her to die. Uzami explains that if he did, she would turn into one of those monsters they saw in the basement. He reveals that man-eaters are actually humans infected by a deadly disease that slowly transforms them. To delay the process, he's been amputating the infected parts and replacing them with machines. But eventually, every patient relapses, forcing more amputations until the body reaches its limit. He asks Maru to end this patient's suffering. Her name is Hashio. If Maru uses his special touch, she can die as a human. When Maru touches her, he senses her core immediately, confirming that he can do it. But before agreeing, he asks what she wants. Using a tablet, Hashio writes that she wants to see the sky one last time. The doctor insists that it's impossible. She must remain connected to the machines. Kiruko, however, refuses to accept that and demands that they at least take her to the sunlight outside her room. Slowly, they carry Hashio and the equipment that keeps her alive out into the open. Meanwhile, outside the building, Liverman's protest grows tense. Someone in the crowd throws a rock at one of the Order's guards. The guards retaliate, and a stone grazes past Mizu's head, knocking her unconscious. The rally scatters in panic. Back at the Liverman base, the higher-ups carry Mizu's body inside. The new interim leader seizes the moment, declaring that she's dead and that they must avenge her by destroying the Order. When they reach the hospital, the guard who had secretly helped Maru and Kiruko tries to rejoin them, but the new leader and his insiders execute him publicly to spark the crowd's rage. The violence spreads into the hospital. Patients who can still fight stay behind to defend the building while the others evacuate. The shouting and chaos echo all the way to the courtyard where Hashio quietly gazes at the blue sky for the first time in years. Dr. Uzami looks at her with grief in his eyes. After sharing one final look of understanding, he asks Maru to finish it. Maru gently places his hand over her and peers into her soul. He finds the small glowing core and clenches it tightly until her life peacefully fades away. Usami wonders aloud if he should have just let her become a monster instead of forcing her to suffer so long. But Kiruko shows him Hashio's final message on the tablet. A note thanking him for giving her back her sight by donating his own eye, and for letting her die as a human. She ends it by confessing her love for him. The doctor breaks down in tears. He carries her body out to where the survivors have gathered after the riots. Kiruko shows the group 2 photographs asking if anyone recognizes the people in them. None of them know Daddy, but they do recognize Robin. He was once Dr. Pepper, a kind and enthusiastic surgeon who worked there 2 years ago. He had learned Uzami's techniques and then disappeared without a trace. Kiruko is thrilled to learn he's still alive, though she tries hard to hide her excitement. Dr. Uzami, meanwhile, gathers the remaining patients and shows them a new settlement where they can live safely. He tells them to go ahead without him. He will stay behind to bury Hashio. Maru and Kiruko remain to guard him. Watching the patients leave, they can't help but feel sorry for them. But Uzami explains that most of the hospital's facilities were built solely for Hashio's care. Maru tells him that there are still many others who need his help, but Uzami shakes his head. He admits he never meant to be anyone's savior. He was only ever devoted to Hashio, his partner. One day, a stranger came begging for treatment, and more followed. He continued making prosthetics only because it made Hashio happy. Now that she's gone, he has no reason left to keep going. As Maru and Kiruko wait quietly for him to finish his farewell, the weight of everything they've seen lingers heavy in the silence. As they continue talking, a gunshot suddenly echoes from above. They rush to the roof and find Usami dead, lying beside Hashio's body. Kiruko cries out in frustration while Maru falls to his knees, shouting that his hands can only bring death, unlike Usami's or Robin's. Kiruko quickly grabs his hands and tells him that he saves more lives than he realizes by destroying the maneaters. After they calm down, they notice that Usami is holding a button marked with the same bird logo as Kiruko's gun. Back at the school, Kano watches Tokyo sleeping on his lap and remembers the days when Asura was still alive. The two of them were inseparable, doing everything together despite her unusual appearance. Asura possessed strange powers like levitating and healing wounds, and she even helped Kano develop his own gift, the ability to project his consciousness outside his body. He often used that power to draw beautiful images of bizarre, otherworldly creatures. One day, Asura entered his room and told him she had discovered the reason for her existence, and that it was time for her to say goodbye. Before Kano could stop her, she disappeared without explaining further. Feeling something was wrong, he ran after her, only to find her lifeless body. After Asura's death, he fell into deep despair. Only Tokyo stayed by his side, encouraging him to keep drawing. As he recalls those painful memories, a sudden sense of dread washes over him. He realizes that whoever killed Asura might be coming for Tokyo next. The following day, Tokyo is called to the infirmary for a routine checkup. Although the nurse assures her that everything is fine, Tokyo is placed in a wheelchair and treated as if she were terminally ill. Her classmates are told she won't be around for a while. Meanwhile, in hell, Kiruko and Maru begin to suspect that heaven, the place they've been searching for, might be connected to Usami and the bird logo they've seen so many times. They have no idea where it is, so they continue wandering aimlessly. Maru shows Kiruko that his previously broken tooth has somehow grown back, even though it was permanent. Before they can make sense of it, a sudden earthquake shakes the area and causes a nearby building to collapse. As they go to assess the damage, they're startled by a local eccentric named Juchai, a talkative, hippie-like man who immediately acts submissive toward them, mistaking them for dangerous thugs. Both Kiruko and Maru are annoyed. To them, he looks more like an organ trafficker than a threat. Kiruko shows him the photos and the bird logo, asking if he knows anything about them or about heaven. Juchai hints that he does but says he's an information broker and will only talk if they give him Kiruko's gun. When they refuse, he changes his offer. He'll share what he knows if they let him milk their time and money. He moves his car a couple of feet from where it was parked and begins his lesson. First, he offers a teaser, 3 theories about what caused the Great Disaster. The first claims that an asteroid struck Earth, devastating the planet much like the one that wiped out the dinosaurs. The second, promoted by History TV, suggests that the man-eaters are actually aliens who invaded Earth. And the third, the war theory, argues that a terror attack in Japan triggered a war that led to the use of an unknown weapon of unimaginable power. When Kiruko and Maru hesitate to pay him more, Juchai threatens to leave until he decides to tell them a personal story. He claims that when he was 12, he stumbled upon a walled town ruled by dominatrix women. Any man who entered was killed, unless the women liked his face enough to keep him as a servant and breeding pet. 2 women eventually chose him to father their child, but when the baby was born a boy, the town's rules dictated his execution. The 3 tried to escape, but only Juchai survived. He shows them a tattoo of the number 11 on his arm as proof of his story. Kiruko immediately grows suspicious. She rubs the mark and reveals it's fake. Furious, she points her gun at him and orders him to leave immediately. After Juchai flees, Kiruko explains to Maru that his behavior was too strange. She suspects he moved his car earlier to hide something behind it. Sure enough, behind the car they find a wall-mounted sign that reads, Apartment 2F, Takahara Academy, marked with the same bird logo. They enter the building and find it abandoned and in ruins, filled with boxes bearing that same symbol. Maru begins to lose hope that the logo has any real connection to their origins. But Kiruko discovers a letter from Takahara Academy describing it as a sanctuary and school for orphans, a place meant to protect them from the outside world of hell. The phrase catches her attention. It convinces her that this academy could still be an important lead. She decides they should investigate the 2 facilities mentioned in the pamphlet. Both are far away, but just then, Juchai returns with his car. He falls to his knees, begging for forgiveness, and shows another 11 tattoo on his shoulder. This time, he swears his story is true and claims he's searching for what happened to his lost child, the very reason he wants to help them now. Juchai first asks Kiruko for her gun, but after Maru confirms that his tattoo is real, they reluctantly agree to join him on a drive to the walled town. It happens to be near the Ibaraki facility mentioned in their pamphlet. After a long road trip, Juchai gives Maru a wig so he can pass as a girl, unless, as Juchai jokes, Maru would rather be a dominatrix pet. Kiruko rolls her eyes, clearly jealous that she's no longer the prettiest trap around. They walk toward the so-called wall town and find a large, unguarded entrance. Inside, the main building seems perfectly preserved yet completely abandoned, as if everyone had vanished in an instant. Everything is still neatly in place, giving the eerie impression that time stopped there. Kiruko finds a journal filled with daily entries that suddenly stop on a certain date. Before she can read further, a chill fills the room. A shimmering orb of water floats toward Maru's back. Kiruko shoves him out of the way just in time, but the temperature drops sharply. The water on the floor freezes solid, and ice spreads rapidly across the room. Kiruko becomes trapped mid-movement, frozen in a crouch as she pleads with Maru to find the maneater because her eyes are freezing shut. Maru, nearly frozen himself, spots a spider-shaped creature clinging to the ceiling. With the last of their strength, they aim Kiruko's gun upward and fire. The blast instantly melts the ice, flooding the room with warmth again. But they hear the spider scuttling on the floor above them. They sprint out, though Kiruko stops suddenly as an idea strikes her. Filling her mouth with water, she runs upstairs and taunts the spider into attacking. It appears outside a window and hurls another water orb at her. As the orb nears, beginning to freeze her again, she spits out the water she held, disrupting the attack and freezing the orb in mid-air. Her theory is confirmed. The creature's freezing ability only works within a certain range. Without hesitation, Kiruko charges forward and fires another shot, slicing the spider in two. One half drops to the ground while the other escapes. When Maru examines the fallen half, he can't find a core in its head, meaning the creature is still alive somewhere. Realizing the town has long been deserted, they decide to move on. Kiruko apologetically tells Juchai that they couldn't find any clues about his son, and that the maneater must have made the school its nest long after it was abandoned. Just as Juchai begins to lose hope, two men approach, greeting him as Borash 11. He recognizes them instantly, fellow Boar Bros, numbers 6 and 9, from his academy days. They tell him that his son is alive and that their group has been living elsewhere. As they drive to this new location, the men explain what happened. About a month after Juchai fled, his son's cries drew attention. Fearing punishment from the women, the men tried to silence the baby. But at that very moment, a maneater broke into the school. The chaos gave them a chance to escape through the hole it had made, though most didn't survive. Finally reunited, Juchai embraces his son, Yugo, who is barely old enough to stand. Kiruko and Maru are welcomed by the group, and they all share a warm barbecue that night. They sleep in separate futons, keeping a respectful distance. 5 feet apart, no homo, as Maru jokes. Everything seems peaceful until the temperature suddenly plummets again. Recognizing the familiar chill, Kiruko jumps to her feet and shouts for everyone to evacuate. The maneater has found them. Everyone rushes out except Juchai, Jugo, and the group's leader. Moments later, the leader appears, carrying the child and dragging Juchai's unconscious body. Kiruko grabs the baby and runs, urging the others to flee, but no matter how far she goes, the freezing cold follows. Her body temperature drops dangerously and she collapses. Maru catches up, takes Jugo from her arms and places him a short distance away. Instantly, the ice begins to melt and Kiruko starts to recover. As she regains her strength, she tries to save the baby, but Maru stops her, insisting that Jugo is the maneater. He can sense the creature's presence inside him. They turn and watch as Jugo, surrounded by a dome of ice, begins to cry, at which point the cold abruptly vanishes. Relieved, they carry him back to the settlement and explain everything. The next morning, Juchai announces that he'll stay with his son and the others, giving his car to Maru and Kiruko. They exchange heartfelt goodbyes and set off, ready to continue their journey, until the car breaks down, killing the moment completely. That evening, however, Juchai kills Boar number 9 in cold blood. He reveals that number 9 was the one who had alerted the dominatrix guards when Juchai and Jugo's mothers tried to escape, leading to their execution. Juchai steals the man's car and flees again, this time taking Jugo with him. Back at the school, Tokyo remains in isolation after the shocking discovery that she's pregnant. She sends messages to Kona, telling him no one will explain what's happening to her, only that she'll be released once the thing that's been. After some time, Tokyo learns that the thing growing inside her will soon be removed. Meanwhile, a new group of unsettling fifth-year children is introduced to the school. As time passes, the students begin to warm up to the newcomers, and the atmosphere gradually becomes friendlier. Tokyo successfully gives birth to her child, a huge relief for the director. She confides in senior researcher Sawatari. About her ambitious plan, she hopes to use Tokyo's child to create a pure heaven. This child might be immune to the mysterious disease that eventually afflicts all the other children. Produced by the artificial being known as Mina Solitaire reminds the director that for a successful brain transplant, the recipient must be at least 13 years old, far longer than the director is expected to live. She dismisses this concern, revealing her twisted plan. First, she'll have her brain transplanted into the newly promoted assistant director, Aoshima. Then, once Tokyo's child is old enough, she'll move her brain into the child's body. Horrified, Sawatari asks if Aoshima has consented to this, but the director coldly replies that consent is a myth to a dominatrix. Realizing he has no power to stop her, Sawatari stays silent. Elsewhere, Mimahime notices a lonely girl sitting apart from the others. The girl introduces herself as Oma, saying that no one likes her because she annoys them. Feeling sympathy, Mimahime befriends her and removes her sunglasses, revealing brilliant blue eyes like Gojo Satoru's. The moment their eyes meet, Mimahime is overwhelmed by a terrifying hallucination. She sees herself being brutally killed by sentient machines. She wakes up in the infirmary, beside Keno, and explains that looking into Oma's eyes made her hallucinate. Her greatest fear? Sharp objects like needles. Mimahime also reveals her ability to see into the future, though she never knows when her visions will happen. As she talks, she suddenly sees a new vision of a monstrous creature approaching her. Frightened, she decides to return to her room. Outside the clinic, she finds Oma waiting with her handkerchief, crying and apologizing. Mimahime gently removes her glasses again, even as Oma pleads for her not to. The hallucination begins once more, but this time Mimahime overcomes her fear and breaks free of the illusion. She reassures Oma that she doesn't care about what others think of her, and the two become close friends. The next day, all the students are called to the swimming pool, where they finally reunite with Tokyo after months apart. A robot then informs them that they will soon undergo a long test to reach the outside of the outside and fulfill their purpose as Haruko. The mention of that name unsettles several students, as it triggers strange, half-forgotten memories within them. Meanwhile, outside in the real world, Maru and Kiruko continue their journey toward the Ibaraki facility. Along the way, they come across a lively market filled with food and goods. Maru is excited to try everything, but Kiruko's attention is caught by a stall selling food from her hometown. She quickly orders 2 portions of stew, but the vendor refuses cash, explaining that old-world currency is no longer accepted. Instead, he tells them they can register at the Ministry of Reconstruction and receive 5 digital chips each for free. Maru has never heard of this ministry, but Kiruko explains that back when she lived as Haruki, Robin told her about a conspiracy, a secret organization that abducted skilled people to rebuild human civilization. It turns out the rumors were true, and the ministry is thriving. At the ministry's office, they fill out endless forms and have their photos taken before receiving 10 chips in total. Since the registry contains information on everyone in the town, Kiruko shows the clerk 2 photos and asks if he recognizes either man. He points to Robin and asks for his name. When she gives the correct answer and says she's family, he confirms Robin is here. After making a call, the clerk tells her she can meet him at the large filtration plant in 2 hours. Kiruko's heart races with anticipation. Maru, sensing her excitement, grows distant and walks ahead silently. She gushes about Robin the entire way, but he remains quiet until finally snapping and telling her to go meet her boot call alone. She promises to be back soon and rushes off to the plant. When she spots Robin, she calls out to him. Their eyes meet, and both of them burst into tears. Inside the plant, Kiruko explains everything to Robin, including that she's actually a man. Though surprised, he accepts it, recognizing familiar traits of Haruki in her behavior. He then shares his story. After his father disappeared, He left their hometown to search for him and eventually ended up at Dr. Usami's hospital, helping people until 2 years ago when he discovered this facility. He gives Kiruko a tour, explaining that it was built to purify water drawn from the nearby river. The facility isn't just being used for shelter. It's also a center for research on plants, aiming to revive the long-lost science of agriculture. Most knowledge of genetic engineering has disappeared, but after they successfully grew crops on fertilized fields, people began settling here. Even the Ministry of Reconstruction moved in, turning it into a self-sufficient town powered by its own electricity. Meanwhile, Maru sulks alone in his apartment, stress-eating while imagining what Kiruko and Robin might be doing up in heaven. Then, chaos erupts. The Mina system crashes, servers shut down, and the school ceiling collapses as explosions rock the buildings. The director is the first to flee, revealing she's been faking her disability all along, just out of sheer laziness. The students panic and run for their lives, led by Mimihime, who orders everyone to take cover in the pool. She notices a hole in one of the walls and decides to investigate, joined by her friends. Kano stays behind to get the younger kids to safety before searching for Tokyo. Mimihime and her group crawl through the hole and find themselves in a vast, open world beyond the school. The ceiling above them stretches endlessly, so immense that Mimihime collapses at the sight of it. When they regain composure, they realize this might be part of the test to reach the outside of the outside. As Haruko once mentioned, they move through a gap in the fence and enter a thick forest. There, they're startled by giant flying insects and birds. Mimihime insists that everyone needs to see this, so she decides to return with a boy named Shiro to bring the others, including Tokyo. Taka and his group choose to continue exploring on their own. As Mimihime and Shiro try to find their way back to the school, they realize the fence is gone. They reach a steep area where Mimihime hears running water and follow the sound to discover a river below the cliff. Shiro believes it flows away from the school, suggesting they follow it upstream. But suddenly, the ground beneath Mimihime gives way, and she plunges down the cliff. Without hesitation, Shiro jumps after her, catching her midair to cushion the fall, but he's badly injured in the process. Mimihime scolds him for being reckless, but Shiro confesses his love for her and vows to always protect her. Crying, she tears off a button from her uniform, one engraved with the bird logo, and gives it to him. "It's not the bird you wanted," she says, "but it'll have to do for now." Back at the facility, Hayashima tells Sawatari she's activating the NOAA project to protect the children. She asks him to give Tokyo her baby, but the problem is there are 2 identical infants and Sawatari can't tell them apart. So he resorts to Eeny, Meeny, Minnie, Mo to choose one. He and a nurse deliver the baby to Tokyo, explaining that she was pregnant and this child is hers and Kona's. Tokyo holds the baby tenderly, asking if they can tell Kona too, but before they can respond, the director storms in, covered in blood and ranting that she's going to win. She lurches toward Tokyo like a deranged patient escaping an asylum, demanding she hand over the baby. Sawatari steps in front to protect Tokyo, but the director commands Mina to seize the child. Mina transforms into a clawed monster and lunges forward, triggering Tokyo's latent powers. Her veins glow and spread across her body, and then across the director's as well, before a blinding light bursts from her, engulfing the room. Meanwhile, back in Hell, Maru spends 2 sleepless nights alone, worrying about when he'll see Kiruko again. When she doesn't return after 3 days, he finally decides to go find her, even if it means third-wheeling with her and Robin. Security tries to stop him at the plant, but Maru's had enough. He throws one guard into the river and swiftly takes down the others. After a brutal scuffle, he finds Kiruko tied up on a bed, at first thinking it's some strange kink of hers until he sees the tears in her eyes. Just then, Robin walks in carrying a tray of coffee. Maru glares at him with pure fury, and Robin instantly panics, dropping everything and running for his life, screaming for help. But with his men all unconscious, he's cornered by a cold, furious Maru. Robin fumbles with the keys, trying to escape, but Maru pins him against the wall. Every time Robin tries to pass him, Maru blocks his path without even acknowledging him, which drives Robin mad. He finally swings a punch, but Maru knocks him out effortlessly, then keeps punching until Kiruko begs him to stop before he kills him. They leave the plant together. Kiruko collapses by the riverbank, crying. Everything she believed in has crumbled. Robin, who once seemed kind, turned out to be a manipulative creep who assaulted her and shattered her sense of identity. Now she doesn't even know if she's still Haruki, or if she's just what remains of Kiruko's thoughts trapped in this body. Maru takes a deep breath, preparing himself for yet another rejection. Probably the 10th one. But this time, he speaks from his heart. He tells Kiruko that he doesn't care about Haruki or Kiruko's past. None of that matters to him anymore. What matters is the person standing right in front of him. He confesses that he's in love with her, the one who's been by his side, who saved him, taught him, and guided him to do what's right. He swears that he'll always protect her no matter what. Kiruko can't hold back her emotions. She breaks down in tears and hugs him tightly, reminding him through her sobs that protecting him has always been her job. She's his bodyguard, after all. When she finally calms down, they sit quietly together by the riverbank. Kiruko pulls out the photograph of Robin, rips it to shreds, and lets the pieces scatter in the wind. Watching her, Maru silently vows that the next time he sees Robin, he'll kill him. Later, investigators from the Ministry of Reconstruction arrive at the plant to inspect the site. They find it completely abandoned. After spotting blood splattered across a wall, they suspect foul play. They locate a set of keys on the floor, unlock a nearby door, and shine their flashlights inside, only to be greeted by a horrifying sight, the body of a woman fused into a monstrous shell. They inch closer to examine it. But then the creature twitches, and suddenly, everyone remembers they're not as brave as they thought. Meanwhile, Kiruko and Maru speed off into the sunset on their bike, continuing their search for heaven.